Hey there guys, what is going on? This might actually end up being our last Modern Warfare video, but it might not. And today we are talking about the top 10 worst things about Modern Warfare this year. Apologies if you can hear the grass mowing in the background. Somebody is out there mowing their grass, but that's okay. It is what it is. And we are going to talk about the top 10 worst things that we hate about Call of Duty this year. Things that just went wrong, things we don't like, bad things, like just things that we cannot stand in this game. And just before we do jump into it here, I know about 80% of you guys watching this video are not subscribed to the channel. So make sure you do hit that subscribe button with those notifications turned on. We are looking towards 4,000 subscribers by the end of the year. That's a fair way off, but I know we can do it if we pull together. You guys are absolutely fantastic. And if you share this video with a friend, you hit that subscribe button, we can hopefully get to 4K by the end of the year, and that would be the ultimate Christmas present. So let's just jump straight into it here with the number 10. Now, the number 10 thing that I don't like about this year's Call of Duty is actually the patch notes. Now, you might consider the patch notes to not be a big deal to you, but to me, as a content creator, I want to know all the information there is to know in the patch notes. Now, the patch notes this year have, of course, been pretty okay. But for the most part, they've been fairly inconsistent with what information they've actually included in them. Now, we've seen different attachments for weapons. We've seen like retuning, weapon balancing, hidden stuff, had new weapons being added that we didn't know were going to be added to the game. Like, there's been so much stuff that has been added to the game, like attachments, like maybe not maps and stuff, but attachments, different weapons, weapon tuning. There's been so many things that have been added to this game, changed in this game, that just straight up weren't in the patch notes. And things that were in the patch notes that weren't in the patch. Statistics that were supposed to be changed that weren't changed until the next patch, and that was amended in the patch notes. And you're like, well, just put whatever is in the game into the patch notes. And you think that wouldn't be that hard. Like, the same person who puts the patch notes out would surely know how much detail to go into the patch notes. But you see time and time again throughout this year's Call of Duty, Modern Warfare's patch notes have just been so inconsistent. The number 9 slot on our list is Dead Silence not being a perk. Now, of course, I have actually grown used to this, and it is not too much of a problem for me now, but most people are still complaining about Dead Silence not being a perk. Like, you'll see a post from Call of Duty Twitter, and it'll either say, no one cares, Call of Duty Cold War comes out soon, or Dead Silence needs to be a perk, or bring back Shoot House, and we'll talk about that more in a second. But, like, Dead Silence is an interesting thing in games. Being able to hear those footsteps, and this was really a problem at the start of the game when the footstep sounds were super loud, super consistent. You could basically just hear everyone across the map. So Dead Silence not being a perk option really drove people up the wall because you could just hear the footsteps so clearly that you knew somebody was coming behind you. You just turn around and you finish them off very, very easily. And when everybody's doing that, it makes for a very slow campy experience, which of course we're going to talk about as well because you know campers are frustrating in this game. So Dead Silence not being a perk is not super issues for me anymore, but I know some of you guys are still out there wondering why they did not include this as a perk. In the number 8 slot, we are looking at inconsistent weapon data. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means a couple of different things to me. These little bars down here, accuracy, damage, range, fire rate, mobility, and control, these basically mean nothing. You don't actually have any idea of what scale these actually represent in terms of accuracy. That bar is slightly higher than it used to be, but what does that actually mean? Like, is that got to do with, like, horizontal recoil control? Is that vertical recoil control? Like, what's actually going on with these statistics? And again, this is something that has been rectified in Call of Duty Cold War with these super detailed weapon stats up to the point of nauseum. Like, you get nauseous looking at some of the weapon stats in that game. You're like, I don't know what that actually means, but that number is smaller than that number, so that must be better. But I mean, you just look at some of these attachment options and you're like, well, recoil control. Okay, well, you would assume that it makes the bullets easier to hit, but this actually refers to, of course, recoil control in the vertical variety. This has no play on your horizontal recoil control, which you should know about. Like, that should be something that you know about. It should actually mention that this does increase our vertical recoil by, say, 10%, and that should be a well-known statistic. I shouldn't have to go to a third-party website to find out that information. Be like, somebody has actually had to painstakingly measure every single increase to every single piece of equipment in this game, and it's like, if they just released the data, what the actual numbers actually mean, what the attachments do as in terms of percentage, well, at least people would have a better idea of what they're throwing on their weapons, and you wouldn't see people running dumb class setups like the tactical suppressor, and then a bunch of other garbage attachments. People would be able to make class setups that suit them. If you're going to change your weapon statistic in this game, like, I don't even care if it doesn't say it, if it doesn't do anything. But if it does have an effect, it should be on the actual attachment statistic itself. It should be known what these attachments actually do. Now, number 7 here is a little bit interesting. Call of Duty Twitter. I mean, these are the most reactionary people on the entire face of the planet, and I know if you're one of these persons or people, you're actually already going to dislike this video because I mentioned you guys at all. Every single post that the Call of Duty Twitter, Infinity Ward Twitter, or the community manager have made this year, there has been a countless number of people just going, "Where's the Shoot House playlist? Oh, we're trying something different this time. We want to actually get you to explore some of the other maps. Bring back the Shoot House playlist. I miss it. It's the best playlist in the game." I understand the frustration about not being able to play your favorite things, but it's not like they're going to go away forever. Shoot House was always going to come back. Every single time they took it away, I mean, it was a little bit frustrating, but it was always going to come back. They always went away at the start of the season so people could enjoy the new maps, play the new content and stuff, and didn't just go into Shoot House and Shipment and just get a million experiences and max rank all of the weapons before they've even been out for like 2 hours. There's a reason they make these decisions, and you just, the reactionary nature, just like you still see people complaining about Dead Silence not being a perk on post today on Twitter. Anyway, I'm not going to rant about Twitter anymore because there is a whole kettle of fish there, so we won't worry about it. We'll just move on to our next thing that I have problems with this game. The number 6 slot are bugs, and this actually being kind of a broken game. Now, throughout this year's Call of Duty, we've seen things that are completely busted, absolutely game-breaking bugs, things that should never have actually made it outside of a test phase. And specifically from memory, I'm talking about something like the AS Val 10-round mags being able to shoot through literally every surface, multiple surfaces in the game, and being basically one of the most broken things that there's ever been in Call of Duty history. And then again, in the exact same patch, the SPR 208 also being a hit scan as a sniper rifle in a Call of Duty game. That should just not be. Or if it is, you should be punished by that in some capacity. I'm talking about the Cold War snipers. They're a little bit slower, but they're still very, very strong. Anyway, just things that are just broken. You can just tell sometimes the people who design this game don't play it at all. Like when they added Dragon's Breath, many people were like, "I thought we escaped this from Black Ops 4. Why have they done this? It's basically ruined the game." And it turned out to be not so bad, but it just made the game not fun when everybody is running around with Dragon's Breath rounds. Just everyone is running a shot. Everyone is sprinting around because it's new and people are like, "Man, that's actually broken. Let's do that. Run around." And it's like, do they play the game? Like, if you want to introduce something like that, maybe at least introduce something like that at the same time as other stuff so people don't just immediately find it, everybody grabs it, and everybody sprints around with it at the same time. It's like all those shotgun challenges and stuff like that. But there have been many bugs that have been widely reported. Like there was one where like you just turn the corner, like your screen will just flash white when you try and walk around a corner, and then you can't play the game. And why is that bug in the game, and why has it not been fixed yet? But it is what it is. I enjoy the game for what it is, and we spoke about a lot of that in yesterday's video with the top 10 things that I do enjoy about this game. If you haven't seen that, make sure you do go watch that one as well. Now, the number 5 problem that I have with this game is, of course, the weapon balancing problems. Now, there have been particular weapons in this game that have been pretty much the most powerful thing from day dot, and they've not been too difficult to unlock. I'm talking about like your MP5, your M4A1, some of the earliest unlocked weapons that you can get in the game. And they've basically been broken for the entire game. They're just too strong, too consistent, like just pretty much the jack of all trades, master of all, which is not what you're after with most of these weapons. You want consistency and you want them to be a little bit different. If you're going to have 10 assault rifles in the game, you probably don't want them to all be either exactly the same or one to be so much better than the others that the other 9 don't even warrant using. I mean, that's not really the case. That's a bit of an exaggerated example, but the M4 is just one of those weapons that doesn't really have too many competitors at the moment. It's just like your MP5, then your AS Val, and maybe your CR56A match might be better than the M4, but it's really a toss-up. But you just get consistency, damage range, stuff like that. And it really shouldn't be the case. I have noticed that they have brought them back into line. Like, what the start of the game, these weapons were completely busted. They were so broken, they were so much better than they are now, and they're still very, very powerful. So it's like, what's the deal? Like, so the weapon balancing does, of course, bug me sometimes in this game. You're just confused. It's like, why did they add this? I'm surprised they haven't added the Dragon's Breath 725 to the game, because that would be another one of those things that you look at and you're like, why have you done this? Now, this is going to be a little bit different here, and it's not really a problem for me per se, but it just shows a lack of willingness in the Call of Duty developers to sort of branch out and try new things. Because when they do try new things, like you will have seen, they did try some new stuff with like Piccadilly and some of the other maps this year. But it didn't work, mostly because the spawns were kinda just completely broken on that map, and they ended up fixing them, and the map was okay, but it's like, there is a lack of good quality original content. Only stuff that people will be clamoring for in like a couple of years down the road is maybe Shoot House. No maps this year apart from like Shoot House and maybe Hackney Yard. That might be a bit of a push, but it's like, what maps are we going to see in Call of Duty? Like, there's been so many maps this year that have been remakes. Like, we've had Crash, Shipment, Vacant, stuff like this. Rust, you just get Hard Hat, Talsec Backlot, Scrapyard. Just maps, broadcast that have been from previous Call of Duty games that have played very, very well in this year's Call of Duty, but that's not original content. Like, of course, they have changed up some of the maps slightly depending on what game mode you're playing on. You can get stuff that looks a little bit different, but for the most part, in essence, these maps are exactly the same as they were whenever they came out, and they play basically the same way. Of course, that does make people feel very good because they are playing maps that they know they like, but it's like, what maps are we going to see in that style of list in the future? The only map that I would actually recommend they put in future games is, of course, Shoot House, just because it's so consistent, it plays very well, it's nice close quarters, and it's sort of a very, very similar style to something like your Nuketown and stuff like that. A lack of good quality original content. They rely way too much on these old maps for nostalgia and making the game good, that I think they need to do better in some of the map design. Now, speaking, of course, of the map design, one of the worst things about this year's Call of Duty is when you're loading up in a quick play playlist and you're just trying to chill, have a good time, and you're playing 6v6, and the game decides that Anaya Palace is the perfect map for you, and you're like, that is the biggest map that I could possibly think of. Basically, it's just the Warzone map with 12 people on it. And you're like, why am I here? Why have they done this to me consistently? Like, I got Anaya Palace so much when the game first came out that I'm like, this map is terrible. It's so big. Why do they keep putting me in it? And how do I leave? Like, just so big, constantly running towards the palace and just dying. And then you do it, just repeat for infinity until you leave and find a different map. Because Anaya Palace is probably the worst map they've ever added to the game. Now, it does play a little bit differently on like larger game modes where there's lots more people. And then we can sort of move on past that it being actually an okay map. Game modes where you actually have to constantly move around, change areas and stuff like that do play a lot better than like TDM on something like that. I mean, 6v6 on that map should just be banned. You should not be allowed to do that. But the revision of it was a little bit better in that regard. It was a lot smaller and it made it actually playable as like a 6v6, maybe push it a 10v10 map. But 10v10 on Anaya Palace is still a pretty large map for that few amount of people on it. Like, it's pretty wild how that was allowed to go on for so long. So Anaya Palace, we did this yesterday when we did feature, of course, my favorite gun in this particular game, and this is my least favorite map in this game this year. Now, my number 2 most hated thing, the thing that probably bothers me up second the most in this year's Call of Duty, doors. Why are there so many doors, and what is their obsession with doors on every single map in this goddamn game? I think the only map in the game that I can probably think of that doesn't have a single door is Shipment. And even then, I was still not convinced that they weren't going to put like opening and sliding doors on the goddamn shipping containers. And it's like, why? What is this obsession with opening and closing doors? I know that you're trying to show off the feature of the engine that is these opening and closing goddamn doors so you can have Warzone work. But it's like so obvious when I played in the Cold War beta that the removal of doors makes the game better. Just you move around so much more smoothly. You don't have to slap a door open as you sprint through it. You don't make noise. Like, you don't have to like quietly creep up to a door and just creak it open. And it's like, what, why? What's the obsession with the doors? I just don't get it. Like, and it also contributes to the factor that we're about to talk about last, and I already mentioned it previously, so you know what the number 1 is going to be, because I know it bothers you too, but the doors just create such a slow playstyle, and I just don't get it. Like, you just run across an open area and you slap open a door and there'll be someone waiting for you. If you could see into that building, there would be less likely for people to be hiding in it. Of course, you're always going to have people sitting in buildings in Call of Duty game, but if the doors don't just slap open and you have to punch through them to get through them, and there's just somebody on the other side of the door and you're like, there was no chance of me killing them. Like, I would have seen it if there was no door there because they would have been perfect view. And you're like, why there's so many doors? It makes people play so slow. I hate the doors in this game. And the number 1 feature that we hate most about Modern Warfare is the campers. The campers not having dead silence. And this is a culmination of pretty much everything that we've included previously. Having such strong weapons with basically no recoil means you can sit and post up in a particular area and literally never move. I know I'm guilty of this myself, and I like to hold power positions because people running out into the open are much easier to kill. When you are sitting still, not moving around, sprinting everywhere, you're much less likely to die. If you're sitting in one goddamn spot on the map, never ever moving, the doors play a role in this. The map design plays a role in this. You have to look at like 50 different angles that you can get killed from if you move out onto a street, or you just sprint across it and hope you don't die. Like, pray to the Jesus, pray to the Lord, because if you run out onto the street, you are going to die. Because there are 8 people looking at you. As soon as you go out in there, you get sprayed down immediately. It is a constant rule in this year's Call of Duty. If you leave your safe spot, the safe spots in this game are so strong. If you leave, you're going to die. It's an action game, and you're just playing it like you're just sitting there in the corner, just waiting for people. And I do this too because it's the most effective way. But why? Why is it like that? It should not be like that. It should be movement. It should be sprinting around. It should be fun, fast-paced action, because that is what a Call of Duty game plays best, and that is the best thing about Call of Duty games. That's why we love it. That's why we still play it up to game 16, 17. That's why we are hype for the new Call of Duty game, because there's a lot of movement. There's a lot of sliding. There's a lot of fast-paced action. I know people won't like the sliding because it's kind of broken, but it is what it is. The fast-paced movement, the fast-paced action of Call of Duty is going to be back in Cold War, hopefully. I know we're going to be coming back in a year and looking at this video and being like, haha, these are the same problems we had in Cold War all year. Wow. But hopefully that game is better. Anyway, we have to end this rant because I'm not going to be able to talk if I don't end this rant. Anyway, guys, I do appreciate you checking out this one, watching this video, because I really did enjoy talking about the good things, and I really did enjoy talking about the bad things, because there's a lot of both in this year's Call of Duty. It is a very inconsistent year, but I really enjoyed myself. I do massively appreciate you sticking around, watching this one. I know some of you have not subscribed. Like 80% of you guys watching this video are not subscribed, so make sure you hit that subscribe button before you go. It's really easy. I'll show you how to do it on screen right now. Make sure you hit that subscribe button with those notifications turned on, and I will see you in Cold War very, very soon, of course. Bye!